Democracy refers to two forms of government. The most common form in which the people have the authority to choose their governing legislators, and the original form in which the people have the authority to decide on legislation. The decision on who is considered part of the people and how authority is shared among or delegated by the people have changed over time in different speeds in different countries. Cornerstone of democracy include freedom of assembly and speech, inclusiveness, and equality membership, consent, voting, right to life, and minority rights. Democracy aims to bring the most benefits to the most number of people. These include: number 1, protecting the interests of citizens; number 2, preventing abuse of power; number 3, promoting equality; number 4, creating stability. Democracies should protect the best interests of the people, regardless of their race, gender, sexuality, religion, or political opinion. Currently, majority of the countries worldwide practice democracy, and one of them is the Philippines.
Having an opportunity to live in a democratic country, Filipinos are able to experience the right in having the power to be a part of political context of the country. In the Philippines, people can vote to elect officials and make decisions to reflect the wishes of the people. Everyone gets a chance to vote on an outcome of a decision, and people can express their right to protest as the Constitution guaranteed freedom of speech, press, and thoughts. However, throughout the years, democracy in the country had been unstable and violated, starting the martial law proclamation during Marcos regime and the rampant corruption scandals of some government officials. Even until the current Duterte administration, democracy remained unstable as a result of being abusive of those who are in power. This resulted to a common people experienced democratic practices such as those related to gender biases, poverty, racial inequality, political marginalization, and crisis of representation. Undemocratic practices are the actions or situations that is not agreement or against with or according to principles, practice, or ideas of democracy. Therefore, undemocratic practices are those that prevent or avoiding freedoms of prosper, takes back sovereignty from people, shows unright treatment or judgment, and the lack of protection in the rights and interests of all citizens. The people are not free to express their political views, and government is forcing them to not engage in any peaceful protest that manifest their satisfaction to the government performance. The manifestation of these undemocratic practices had always been present in every democratic country. In the Philippines, undemocratic practices has always been rampant and actually can be seen in the current society.
Gender biases is actually one of the undemocratic practices has been existed. Throughout the years, gender biases has been one of the primordial issues in every countries. Although today, different countries had made steps to stop gender discrimination by making laws and improving women's rights, gender biases is still going on. Gender biases is also referred as gender discrimination and not only seen in culture or tradition, but it can also be seen in politics.
When democracy is introduced, gender biases is already present. Women have no power to vote and crucial to participate in any political matters. The reason for this is the perception that a woman's sole purpose was to bear a child and expected to spend almost all of her time at home. This case of looking at women as inferior to a man had continued for many more years. Unlike men, women needed to fight for their right to democratically participate in voting. In the Philippines, On September 17, 1937, women's suffrage was legalized after the required threshold for the plebiscites of 300,000 was surpassed. 447,725 women affirmed their aspiration to vote against 33,300 no votes. The Philippines was one of the first Asian countries to allow this right for women. On the other hand, in terms of women participation in any political matters, although the Philippines appears to be ahead of its neighboring countries by having 2 women president already, major hurdles are still placed for women to gain a firmer foothold in politics. It is basically on a light male-dominated political landscape. The slow increase in women's representation in politics may be attributed to prevailing hierarchical norms and values and gender stereotypes. It has always been said that politics is more realm of men than women. Gender stereotypes that consider women as weak, emotional, and indecisive, qualities that are undesirable in negotiation and decision-making, discourage voters from voting for women candidates. At the same time, the multiple burden experienced by most women, wherein they bear most of the responsibilities for performing domestic duties, while they engage in political, economic, and social activities, discourage women themselves from running for a public office.
The Philippines is enmeshed in the most severe political and economic crisis since gaining the independence from the United States in 1946.
The Aquino administration would like to believe that it has made strides in improving transparency and accountability. While there is empirical support for this, corruption is not the only gripping problem of Philippines democracy. There is also a need to improve government responsiveness, political inclusion, and popular participation. One study attributed this to the inability of democracy regime to integrate different groups within society to the electoral process as well as policy making. The long list of identified challenges relate to dynastic politics, costly elections, weak political parties, and the absence of meaningful public participation. The deficits, if not addressed, could worsen into a full-blown crisis of representation as seen in other countries, some of which descended into a downward spiral of polarization and instability. If the next administration is sincere in implementing political reforms, amending the 1987 Constitution should figure prominently in the 2016 presidential elections. So far, only one candidate has exposed a grand redesign of the political system by advocating for federalism. The other candidates have hinted to an openness to changing the Charter's economic provisions. In the institutional design scholarly literature, political scientists believe that changing rules and institutions alter the incentives of politicians and the public in their electoral choices.
However, political culture, historical legacies, and other factors can muddle the pure effects of institutional changes as well as generate unintended consequences. It is therefore important to adopt reforms that are calibrated in nature rather than seek grand redesign of political system without regard to contextual conditions.